Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Peace be with you. We talked about the Prophet ﷺ starting to plan to leave Mecca and to go towards Yathrib. First by being in touch with the people from Yathrib at Al-Aqaba twice, and then having a covenant that he will be protected. So it took him almost 2 years to prepare this Hijrah, this exile from Mecca to Yathrib. And that's important because even though he knew that Allah was with him, he knew that Allah through a dream told him it's time to go. At the same time, he was dealing with the reality of the world. And it's a teaching for all Muslims. Of course we believe in God. Of course we think that He is with us when we do good deeds. But we should know that whatever the situation, facing enemies or dealing with difficulties, with social challenges, we have to do our best just to deal with the causalities in this world, the causes and everything that is around us. And this is exactly what the Prophet ﷺ did as a message for all of us. You just don't go like this, God is with us and أتوكل على الله. التوكل على Allah, relying on God, means I rely on my own capacity as much as I can, but beyond what I do, He can. Beyond what my own limitations, I rely on God. And this is what happened to the Prophet ﷺ. And this is the very meaning of the verse that we find in the Quran. إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُوا مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. God will not change anything in people if they don't change what is in themselves. So we have to know that it's completely opposite to any kind of fatalism, the way things have to be understood as Muslims. So he started to deal with the situation, and he was planning with Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, and they relied on somebody who was, in fact, the guide was from the polytheistic tribes. He was sharing with them their belief, and still Abu Bakr as-Siddiq chose him because of his capacity, because of his ability, because of his expertise to help them to get out, based on the values, based on the ethical values, and the fact that this guy was known as trustworthy. So he was not only relying on Muslims, he relied on someone who was from the ideology of the enemy, but he was fair and he was right. And we need also to keep this, because in our minds, not only to remain within our community thinking, oh, with Muslims we are, among Muslims we stay, and with Muslims only we deal. That's not true, because you can find Muslims who are not so honest, and you can find people of other faiths and people who are not even sharing your beliefs and your principles, who can be fair with you. And this is also what happened to the Prophet ﷺ when they were dealing with the guide that Abu Bakr as-Siddiq chose, Abdullah ibn Uraykat. Now, when they were on their way, they decided to go towards south, not to attract the attention of the Quraysh, and to go south for afterward go towards the north and towards Yathrib. So they went to a ghar, a cave, Thawr, and they stayed there for few days. And the son and the daughters of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq came, and they were bringing them to eat. And the Quraysh they realized that he was not there. And in fact, before leaving, what happened is that the Prophet ﷺ heard that they wanted to kill him. So he asked Ali, karramallahu wajha, to stay in his house, and he left during the night with Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. When they saw that Ali was there, they started looking for the Prophet ﷺ. So they understood that there was a trick. So a delegation, a group of people from Quraysh went towards the south, and they in fact arrived in front of Ghar Thawr, where the Prophet ﷺ and Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu were hiding. And they started to look, and in fact what they saw Abu Bakr as-Siddiq was seeing them, and he was scared. Say, if they move down, they will look and they will see us. And if they look down, they will see us. And the Prophet ﷺ told him what we find in the verse, and this is also reported by the Quran. فَقَدْ نَصَرَهُ اللَّهُ إِذْ أَخْرَجَهُ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا ثَانِيَ اثْنَيْنِ إِذْ هُمَا فِي الْغَارِ إِذْ يَقُولُ لِصَاحِبِهِ لَا تَحْزَنْ إِنَّ اللَّهَ مَعَنَا. Allah has already helped him when those who disbelieve expelled him, and he was the second of two in the cave. He said to his friend, don't worry, God is with us. So it's reported in the Quran, Allah helped him at that time. They were just with no powerless. So almost 2 years of preparation and planification and to plan, to live, and at that moment, this very moment, is just between you and them. At the entrance of the cave, you are just vulnerable. And the second thing is that is reported by Al-Bukhari, by Ahmad, is what the Prophet said to him, Ya Aba Bakr, ma dhannuka bithnain, Allahu thalithuhuma. Oh, Abu Bakr, what do you think of two whose third is God? So we are not on our own. And what happened at this very moment is that they saw at the entrance a spider web, and a dove had its nest here. Say, it's impossible just to have this spider web in front of the entrance. They cannot be inside because this couldn't be at the entrance at the same time. So they thought they are not in because of the spider web. Look, once again, almost 2 years of strategy, planning, go south in order to afterward go north. And at the end, it depended on a spider web. Very fragile, and at the same time showing the power of God. The power of God is to protect you through fragile means, according to human beings. But at the same time, this is where we understand that, once again, he did what he had to do. And then, أَتَوَكَّلُ عَلَى اللَّهِ. We don't worry, Abu Bakr. Allahu ma'ana. God is with us and He will help us to get out of this. So, and then what happened is that they left and they were able to carry on their journey towards Yathrib for 20 years. And after 20 days. And after 20 days, they arrived at Quba. And Quba is just at the periphery of Yathrib. And Yathrib, just now, we are going to call it Medina. Medina is going to be Madinat al-Rasul, the city of the Prophet, of the Messenger. Al-Madina al-Munawwara, it's the city, the enlightened city, because the Prophet ﷺ was to settle there for the rest of his life. So Yathrib became Medina when and after he arrived. What he did in Quba, it's important, is when he arrived at the periphery, he straight away built a mosque. And he will do this in in every step, every time he stopped, he was to build a mosque. So he did this in Quba, he did this after this, he did this in the valley of Ranuna, and then he did this in Medina when he arrived. That's also important because when they were leaving Mecca, it meant we are leaving our home, we are leaving our reality, we are leaving our customs, we are leaving our people, and then we are entering and arriving in a strange reality. We are foreigners. And the mosque, as the first thing that was built, was sending 3 messages. First, wherever you go, because you need to remember that the Prophet ﷺ said that the earth is a mosque, the whole earth is a mosque. But when you come here and you decide that this is a sacred space within the sacred earth, it means that this is the centrality of our presence here. So it means our presence, the central dimension of our presence, is the direction of our prayers, and the direction of our prayers are the meaning of God and the presence of God in our life. This is one. The second, it's also sent the message of settling down. We are here to stay and we are at home. So when the mosque is built, the message is now we are at home. Now we are at home and we are again opening up towards the environment, because this is also something that we need to get out of the mosque. And so the mosques are reminding us of the meaning, giving us the direction towards Al-Kaaba, and telling us wherever you are on earth, the direction towards the center is here, but you are at home at the periphery, because the mosque is sending to yourselves, but also to the people around you, this message. And this is what the Prophet ﷺ did. And by the way, wherever the Muslims went, in Africa, in Asia, in Europe, in the United States of America, everywhere, the mosques have exactly the same meaning. The meaning of God's presence, the direction, and being at home. That's also an essential message here. It's not, as it is understood sometimes, that we are alien to the place. No, that we are accepting, acculturated to the place. It's the best definition of this. Now, this exile, this hijrah, it's important because, as you know, Umar ibn al-Khattab later decided that this would be the starting of the Islamic calendar. Now, what we need to get from al-Hijrah, it's lessons at different levels. Of course, the first meaning that we understood, they wanted to avoid persecution. They wanted to find a place where they can be living together in a peaceful space. So, in fact, it was not easy, because you have to leave everything that has to do with your roots, with your family, and to leave. So, exile in itself, it's a test. It's the test of the trial of trust. If you trust God, you should know Ardullahi wasi'ah. God's earth is spacious, is vast. So go wherever you can, but you have to avoid persecution. So it's the first teaching here. The physical teaching is a trial of trust. But there is a second one. Because, as you know, the first Muslims, they got the principles of Islam and they got the first revelations. So their first reaction was to think, or was, it was natural to think, the way we are Muslims in Mecca is to be a Muslims everywhere, to be a Muslim everywhere as we were in Mecca. And it's a trial of intelligence, because when they arrived in Medina, they just realized the customs are not the same. The intertribal relationships are not the same. The presence of women within the society is not the same. Even Umar ibn al-Khattab was shocked once he was talking to his wife. She answered back. And he said, how dare you answer back? And say, ask your daughter. And ask your daughter. His daughter was the Prophet's wife, ﷺ. And then he understood that in Medina, the presence of women, the way they talk, the way to interact with men within the society was completely different. The trial of intelligence means here, be faithful to the principles, but know that you deal with different contexts, different cultures, different ways of life, and that we have to deal with this. So the Muslims who naturally thought there is only one way to be a Muslim, it's the way we were Muslim as to the principles and our culture, this exile was teaching them, no, you are Muslims as to the principle, and you have to deal with a diversity of cultures as to the way you deal with your life. That's also an important test, an important trial, because it has to do with your faithfulness to the principles and not reducing Islam to your culture. Islam is not the Arab culture, is not the Asian culture, is not even the Western culture. It's not a culture. Islam is a set of principles with a diversity of cultures. So in the universality of Islam, there is this way of dealing with a diversity of culture. Now, exile was also something which has to do with a spiritual experience, because it was very difficult to leave the Mecca. It was very difficult to leave the people you love, and to leave your roots, because roots are what defines you in your personality and in your way of dealing with the world. And then, in fact, from the very beginning, exile has also a spiritual dimension. Remember, in Surah Al-Muzammil, the Prophet ﷺ heard from the very beginning, وَاصْبِرْ عَلَى مَا يَقُولُونَ وَاهْجُرْهُمْ هَجْرًا جَمِيلًا. Endure patiently what they say and exile yourself from them politely. Politely is not exactly the right translation here. Jamil, a beautiful exile. So it has to be done with dignity, and but exile yourself from what they are saying. And what we have in Surah Al-Muddathir, وَالْرِجْزَ وَهْجُرْ, and exile yourself from abomination. Meaning that this physical exile that you are experiencing to avoid persecution, there is a spiritual exile within your own heart to exile yourself from the people who are attacking you and from abomination and sins, and this is the spiritual exile. So exile has a spiritual dimension as well as a physical dimension, and it's something here which is essential. Once the Prophet ﷺ was asked, again in Ahmad, it's a hadith quoted in Ahmad, they say, what is the best exile? The best exile is to exile yourself from al-haram, from everything which is not good. Now, we arrive here in Medina. Medina now, in Medina al-Munawwara, is where the Prophet ﷺ settled and started to live with his companion. And he did three things, which in fact are also full of teachings for us today. The first thing that he did is, when he arrived in Medina, was to say to the people, افشوا السلام أطعموا الطعام سلوا الأرحام صلوا والناس نيام تدخلوا الجنة بسلام. Spread peace, feed the angry, honor kingship, pray while the people are sleeping, you will enter paradise in peace. At the time he was settling, it was all about peace. Spread افشوا السلام, spread peace, and then you will enter paradise with peace. Between the two peace is honor the poor people, honor the needy people, just respect the kingship, and at the same time pray during the night, which is when the people are asleep, which is the spiritual dimension here, that the relationship with night, it's important in the way you are going to deal with your days and the people. And he started covenants with the people, and it's what we call the first constitution. He started to have covenants and contracts with the surrounding tribes and the tribes within Medina, with the Jewish tribes, with the Christian tribes, and he decided it was based on equality and justice. This is where we stand all together. And he was saying about the Jews at that time, لَهُمْ لَنَا وَعَلَيْهِمْ مَعَلَيْنَا, they have the same rights and the same duties as us, meaning it's equality, and they are part of our ummah. So ummah is not only a very close definition of us among Muslims, is all the people who have covenant. And al-Muslimun عند شروطهم, the Muslims should respect their own word and their own contract. This is part of what the Prophet ﷺ was saying. So this is the way he was dealing with his new society and respecting and asking the covenants and the rules to be respected. The second thing that he did, which is important, is that he looked at the society and he started by accepting everything which was good in Medina. And this is also something that we need to understand. He didn't come and reform everything. No, he reformed the rules of the market that were unjust. Look, economy. He did with the power by saying now it's about equality. So power, money, and then also trying to respect the culture of the people. He knew that the answer liked singing. So in one wedding, he said, just come with singers, and because they like it. So he was dealing with pleasing their culture but knowing the rules. And then what he did is also a specific al-mu'akha, a contract between the Ansar, the people who were living in Medina, and al-Muhajirun, the people who were coming from Mecca, and he decided to bring them together. In fact, for the first to share their richness, their wealth with the new incomer, because they had nothing and they had to start a new life. And the second thing is for the second, the Muhajirun, to teach Islam to those who were new in Islam. So for the one who were new in the city, to be held by the people who were the people who are living in the city, and for the people who are living in the city to be taught Islam by those who knew more, because they have been Muslims for a longer period of time. So this is where we need to get this, which is important for us, is the way the Prophet ﷺ also get the Pact of Brotherhood, which is al-mu'akha, as we said, to help this society to live together. There is something here which it's important, because at the end of the day, it's all based on this brotherhood. And he started and he understood that there will be no future in the Muslim community in Medina, as well as it was in Mecca, but in Medina, based on brotherhood. And we need to get this as something which is essential. The unity of the community are not only words that we utter. This is love that we share. And this is the Prophet ﷺ, and it has to be seen in the way the society is working, by the way the people avoid talking about one another, in the way they are respecting each other, and they are sharing their belongings, and they are sharing their what they have within the society, their richness, their wealth, and everything. And remember, al-Hadith al-Qudsi was saying, إن الله تعالى يقول يوم القيامة أين المتحبون بجلالي اليوم أظلهم بظلي يوم لا ظل إلا ظلي. In the day of judgment, where are those who loved one another for the sake of my glory? Today I shall shade them with my shade. On the day there is no shade but mine. We need to remember this, because it's not only words for the first community, this is a state for eternity. This is what we need to get, loving God and loving one another in God, through God, by the power of God. That's also the message that we get from the very beginning, and it has to do with spreading peace around us. Ifshu salam. This is, by the way, what we are saying. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Peace be upon you. Remember, don't forget to tell the people you love that you love them. Life is fragile.